Welcome to the Daily History Chronicle. Each day, we travel back to discover a pivotal moment that changed the world. These aren't just dates and facts. They're stories of courage, conflict, innovation, and consequence that still echo through our lives today. Are you ready to explore? Let's see what happened on this day in history.
March 3rd, 1878. San Stefano, a small village just outside of Constantinople. In a hotel scheduled for demolition within decades, Russian diplomats Count Nicholas Ignatiev and Alexander Neladov sit across from Ottoman Foreign Minister Safet Pasha and Ambassador Sadullah Pasha. The Ottoman Empire has just lost a war. Badly. Russian troops are camped outside Constantinople. The Sultan has no choice but to sign whatever the Russians demand. And what Russia demands is breathtaking. An independent Greater Bulgaria stretching from the Danube River to the Aegean Sea, nearly all of Macedonia, direct access to the Mediterranean. Essentially, Russia is carving out a massive new state, nominally independent, actually a Russian puppet, right in the heart of the Ottoman Balkans. The Bulgarians, who've been under Ottoman rule for 500 years, are about to be liberated. And they're about to trade one empire for another. The treaty gets signed. Bulgaria celebrates. Britain and Austria-Hungary panic. 4 months later, they'll force Russia to tear the whole thing up and start over. The treaty that freed Bulgaria will last exactly 123 days. This is the Daily History Chronicle, where we explore the moments that shaped our world and discover why they still matter today. I'm Richard Backus, publisher of University Teaching Edition, and every day I get to share a piece of history that I think you'll find as fascinating as I do. Let's take a look. Here's what intrigues me about this moment. The Treaty of San Stefano represents both genuine national liberation and cynical imperial expansion. It freed millions of people from Ottoman oppression, and it immediately placed them under Russian control. Understanding what happened requires holding both truths simultaneously. For Bulgarians, March 3rd, 1878 is Liberation Day. They still celebrate it as their most important national holiday, the day they became free after 5 centuries of foreign rule. For the great powers of Europe, Britain, Austria, Hungary, and France, March 3 marked the day Russia won the Balkans and threatened the entire European balance of power. Both perspectives are valid. Both are true. And that's what makes this story worth examining. Let me build the clock for you on how we got here. The Ottoman Empire in 1878 is what diplomats call the sick man of Europe. For centuries, it ruled vast territories from the Middle East to North Africa to Southeast Europe. But by the 1870s, it's crumbling. National movements among Greeks, Serbs, Romanians, and Bulgarians are demanding independence. The empire can't reform fast enough to satisfy them and can't suppress them effectively either. Bulgaria has been under Ottoman control since the 14th century, 500 years. The Bulgarian Orthodox Church was subordinated to the Greek patriarchs. Bulgarian language and culture were suppressed. Bulgarian peasants paid heavy taxes to Turkish landlords. When Bulgarians tried to revolt in 1876, the Ottoman response was brutal. Somewhere between 15,000 and 30,000 killed in what became known as the Bulgarian Horrors. The massacres sparked outrage across Europe. British Prime Minister Gladstone wrote pamphlets condemning Ottoman atrocities. Russia, positioning itself as the protector of Orthodox Slavs in the Balkans, saw an opportunity. In April 1877, Russia declared war on the Ottoman Empire. The Russians framed it as a crusade to liberate oppressed Christian peoples. That was partly true. Russia genuinely supported Slavic independence movements. Pan-Slavism The idea that all Slavic peoples should unite had real ideological support in Russia. But Russia also had strategic interests: access to warm water ports, control of the Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits, influence in the Balkans. The weakening of the Ottoman Empire strengthened Russia's position in the region. Both motivations existed simultaneously. Russia was helping Bulgarians and using them. The Russo-Turkish War of 1877 and 1878 went badly for the Ottomans. Russian forces, along with Romanian and Bulgarian volunteers, pushed through the Balkans. After a brutal siege at Plevna that stalled them for months, the Russians broke through. By January 1878, Russian troops were at the outskirts of Constantinople. The Ottoman Empire sued for peace. They had no choice. The Russians could have taken Constantinople if they wanted to. And that's when things got complicated. Picture this: San Stefano, March 3rd, 1878. The treaty gets signed. Here's what it creates: a greater Bulgaria, autonomous under Ottoman sovereignty, but effectively independent, stretching from the Danube to the Aegean Sea, from the Black Sea almost to the Adriatic. It includes most of Macedonia, parts of Thrace, and access to 3 different seas. On paper, it's autonomous. In reality, Russian troops will occupy it for 2 years. A Russian commissioner will oversee its government. A prince approved by the great powers, meaning Russia, will rule it. Serbia, Montenegro, and Romania became fully independent, with expanded territories. Russia regains Bessarabia, which it lost in the Crimean War, as well as significant territory in the Caucasus, Batum, Kars, and Ardahan. Bosnia-Herzegovina gets autonomy on paper. The Ottoman Empire promises reforms for its Armenian population. For Bulgarians, this is a miracle. 5 centuries of oppression are ending. A large state encompassing most of the historic Bulgarian lands, churches, schools, and the government in Bulgaria, real independence after generations of subjugation. For Russia, this is strategic brilliance. A large, grateful Slavic Orthodox state in the Balkans that will naturally align with Russian interests. Access to the Mediterranean through a client state. The Ottoman Empire was reduced to a rump state in Europe. For Britain and Austria-Hungary, this is a nightmare. Here's what troubles me about what happened next. The great powers didn't care what Bulgarians wanted. They cared about their own strategic interests. Britain had spent the entire 19th century propping up the Ottoman Empire to prevent Russian expansion. The British called it maintaining the balance of power. The reality was that Russia was kept away from the Mediterranean and the routes to India. A huge Russian-controlled Bulgaria meant Russian influence stretching to the Aegean. It indicated that Russian ships might use Bulgarian ports. It meant the Bosphorus and Dardanelles, the straits connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, were under Russian pressure. Austria-Hungary had its own concerns. It wanted Bosnia-Herzegovina for itself. It feared Slavic nationalism spreading to its own restless minorities: Serbs, Croats, Czechs, Slovaks. A powerful Russia-backed Bulgaria threatened Austrian interests in the Balkans. Within weeks of the treaty signing, British Prime Minister Disraeli mobilized the fleet. Austria-Hungary threatened war. German Chancellor Bismarck offered to mediate. Russia, exhausted from the war and financially drained, couldn't fight Britain and Austria-Hungary simultaneously. The Russian government had always claimed the Treaty of San Stefano was just a preliminary draft subject to great power approval. Now that claim was tested. In June 1878, the great powers met at the Congress of Berlin. The Congress of Berlin tore up the Treaty of San Stefano. Greater Bulgaria was divided into three parts. The Principality of Bulgaria, reduced to the territory between the Danube and the Balkan Mountains, plus Sofia, still nominally Ottoman, actually autonomous. Eastern Rumelia, south of the Balkan Mountains, supposedly autonomous under Ottoman sovereignty, but with a Christian governor. In practice, Ottoman Macedonia returned entirely to Ottoman control. Bulgaria lost two-thirds of the territory promised at the Treaty of San Stefano, lost access to the Aegean, lost most of Macedonia, where millions of Bulgarians lived. Austria-Hungary got to occupy Bosnia-Herzegovina. Britain got Cyprus. Russia retained its territorial gains in the Caucasus, but lost its dominance in the Balkans. The Bulgarians were devastated. They'd been promised liberation. They were in a truncated state that didn't include half their population. But here's the complexity. Even the smaller Bulgaria was still independent, still had self-government, still had their church, language, and culture protected. Compared to 5 centuries of Ottoman rule, even the reduced Bulgaria was genuine freedom. We're still living with the consequences of March 3, 1878. Bulgaria eventually reunited with Eastern Rumelia in 1885, peacefully through a bloodless coup. It declared full independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1908, but Macedonia remained divided, sparking conflicts that helped trigger the Balkan Wars of 1912 and 1913, which helped set the stage for World War I. The patterns established in Berlin, great powers redrawing borders, national movements caught between competing empires, treaty obligations that no one intended to enforce, dominated European politics until 1914. And the specific issue of Russian influence in the Balkans, still relevant. Russia still sees itself as the protector of Orthodox Slavs, still seeks warm water ports and access to the Mediterranean, still competes with Western powers for influence in Southeast Europe. The geography hasn't changed, the strategic interests haven't changed. Every time we see great powers negotiating the fate of smaller nations without consulting them, we're witnessing echoes of the 1878 Berlin Conference. The British historian A.J.P. Taylor wrote about the Treaty of San Stefano. If the Treaty of San Stefano had been maintained, both the Ottoman Empire and Austria-Hungary might have survived to the present day. He meant that the Congress of Berlin, by undoing the Treaty of San Stefano, set in motion the nationalist conflicts that destroyed both empires. The Ottomans lost Macedonia, which sparked Bulgarian irredentism, which in turn sparked the Balkan Wars, which fatally weakened the Ottomans. Austria-Hungary's occupation of Bosnia-Herzegovina created Serbian resentment, which led to the assassination at Sarajevo, which started World War I. The solution at Berlin created more problems than it solved. The attempt to maintain the balance of power guaranteed that balance would eventually explode. So what do we make of March 3, 1878? For Bulgarians, the Treaty of San Stefano represents their finest moment. National liberation after 500 years. They celebrate it as Liberation Day. The fact that the treaty was revised doesn't change its meaning. Recognition of Bulgarian nationhood. Freedom from Ottoman oppression. The beginning of self-determination. For Russians, San Stefano represents military victory and strategic brilliance that was then stolen by Western powers at Berlin. They helped liberate Slavic peoples. They gained territory, and then they were forced to give most of it back by powers that had done nothing to help the Bulgarians. For the great powers, the Treaty of San Stefano represents the danger of allowing a single power to dominate a strategic region. They corrected Russian overreach. They maintained the balance of power. For about 35 years, until it collapsed in 1914. All of these perspectives contain some truth. Russia did liberate Bulgaria from Ottoman rule. That liberation was real. Bulgarian peasants stopped paying tribute to Turkish landlords. Bulgarian children could attend Bulgarian language schools. Bulgarian Orthodox Christians didn't have to answer to the Greek patriarchs. All of that matters. And Russia created a puppet state designed to serve Russian strategic interests. The Greater Bulgaria of San Stefano would have been under Russian control. That also matters. Bulgaria gained real freedom. Even the reduced Bulgaria of the Treaty of Berlin was genuinely self-governing. Bulgaria was immediately caught up in great power competition, with its national interests subordinated to the strategic calculations of Russia, Britain, and Austria-Hungary. The way I see this, national liberation is complicated when it's delivered by empires with their own agendas. The freedom is real. The strings attached to that freedom are also real. Bulgaria was freed from the Ottomans. Bulgaria was also used by Russia. Both things are true, and the great powers who revised the treaty at Berlin were neither villains protecting the balance of power nor heroes preventing Russian domination. They were empires protecting their interests, as Russia does. The Bulgarian people's desires were secondary to great power politics. That's not unusual in 1878. It's just reality. I'm Richard Backus, and this is the Daily History Chronicle. Tomorrow, we'll explore another moment that shaped our world. Until then, ask yourself, when great powers compete for influence, who speaks for the small nations caught between them? Can liberation delivered by one empire ever be truly free? Because that's what the Treaty of San Stefano teaches us, not just about the complexity of national independence, but about how freedom, granted by empires, comes with obligations that often last for generations. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, then please tell a friend. I hope you will join me again tomorrow for more of our shared history.